Historically speaking, about the only thing worse than getting shot with an AutoMag was being a financial investor in a company that manufactured the AutoMag.
Over. There we go.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and perhaps today we are looking at the end of the AutoMag curse. This is the most recent iteration of the AutoMag 180, manufactured by AutoMag Ltd. And it's actually the first new iteration of the AutoMag since the early 1980s. So to put this in a little bit of perspective, first off, the AutoMag 180 is one of the early group of self-loading Magnum automatic pistols. These would include guns like the Wilde Survivor, the AutoMag, the LAR Grizzly, basically oversized semi-auto pistols firing massively powerful cartridges. They were intended for handgun hunting, for target shooting, and for simply having a ginormous automatic pistol. Now, the original AutoMag was designed by a guy named Harry Sanford and two guys, Harry Sanford and Max Guerra, and well, I have a video on the original Pasadena manufactured AutoMags, which I'll link at the end of this video. You can take a look at that to see where the story really started. But the short version is, in the summer of 1971, the guns first started shipping. By the spring of 1972, AutoMag had gone bankrupt. But the concept of this pistol and the magnum magnificence of it was so alluring that investors continued to line up with the idea that, oh, the last guys did it wrong, but we can do it right. Like they finally got rid of the problems. We can take over the company and make them right, and we'll make a ton of money and sell a ton of guns, and it'll be great. This pistol went through no fewer than 6 different companies between 1973 and 1982. There were a total of about 9,000 AutoMag 180s manufactured by this sequence of companies. And it really was the same tooling, the same pistol, that just one company would go bankrupt and sell off all their assets, and some other company, be it a real company or a paper iteration of the former company, would buy up the assets at a huge discount, try to make the guns, dump a ton of capital into making them, then not be able to get that many sales and have a ton of quality control problems and go bankrupt themselves. And this process would simply repeat and repeat and repeat. Now, Harry Sanford, the designer, passed away in 1996, and ownership of everything that was left at that point passed to his son, Walter Sanford. Walter sold off everything that was AutoMag in 2015 to AutoMag Ltd, who are the current manufacturers. Now, they're kind of in the same boat here as the previous buyers. As it turns out, the current owners bought the remnants of the company because, well, initially they just had a friend who wanted to buy a couple of parts. They tracked down the company, and they're like, hey, we want to buy these couple of parts. And Sanford's like, well, that's cool. I'll happily sell you the parts, but I'd really like to sell everything. They send a list of everything, what everything entails, and the current owners who formed AutoMag Ltd after buying everything, they look at this list and they're like, wow, there's hundreds of frames that are still there and lots of other parts, and you know what? Everyone's finally worked out the kinks. We can just assemble a bunch of guns, sell them, and make some money, and it'll be great, and then, you know, move on to the next thing. They're not really gun engineering people until they actually get all of these parts and discover, wow, this is actually a gigantic, horrible money pit because all of these parts have huge problems. So they had 200 bolts broken because a lot of the original parts were cast. Bolts and frames and cocking pieces were all cast. They had porosity issues. They had durability issues. The original guns had significant both quality control issues and just general functioning and reliability issues. It was difficult sometimes to get them to run with more than 5 rounds in the allegedly 7-round magazine, for instance. So what's impressive is the current AutoMag Ltd, instead of doing what all of the previous companies did and make some guns that don't really work and sell them until finally it catches up and then they go bankrupt, the current AutoMag Ltd has spent the last 7 years now actually re-engineering the gun and completing what the design should have been in the first place. And this involves a couple dozen tweaks to the design. Some of them very significant, some of them very small. But it seems like what these add up to is an AutoMag 180 that is actually now reliable, enjoyable, accurate, and actually a really nice gun, assuming that a 44 AMP, that's 44 AutoMag pistol, assuming a giant 44 AMP self-loading pistol is the gun that you're looking for. So let's pull this apart and take a closer look at some of the internals. We'll compare it to an original, earlier production, 1970s production AutoMag, and see some of what they changed in the design. All right, let's start by putting this thing in proper size perspective. There's a 1911. These are, frankly, huge. They offer both 6.5 and 8.5 inch barrel versions. But if you're going to do an AutoMag, why would you do it halfway? This is the 8.5 inch, which I imagine has to be the one that would be more popular. Mechanically, this is identical to the original AutoMags, just with small features tweaked to basically fix the system and turn it into a fully functional working gun. We have a short recoil operated rotating bolt mechanism here, and the way that you cock this thing, honestly, you cock the hammer first and then you can cycle the bolt back. And this is one of the immediate improvements that you'll recognize if you've ever handled an original AutoMag. Originals were actually really quite difficult to cycle open manually. And what they've done on this is dramatically lightened the force required to do that, so I can pretty easily cycle that back, lock it open. Once it is locked open, the barrel and barrel extension do slide freely through, well, this would be their normal when cycling distance of travel. So when you're firing for real, this is going to come back this far. That's going to cause the bolt to cam open, and then once it's unlocked, it cycles back. We'll show you that in detail in a moment. Here is the magazine that holds 7 rounds, and that is 7 rounds of 44 AMP, which is essentially rimless 44 Magnum. This is Starline manufactured brass, 44 AutoMag, and again, for comparison's sake, there's 9mm Parabellum. So this is significantly bigger. We're talking about 240 grains to about 1,200 feet per second. So it's a quite powerful cartridge. Now, while we're looking at the magazine, I want to start showing you some of the improvements, because this is the new production magazine, and this is a magazine from an original, in this case, a North Hollywood manufacturer, AutoMag. So one improvement to the new ones is that the base plate is now removable instead of being welded on. More importantly, and you can't really see it here because it's a small change, but the new magazines have actually been elevated. They sit approximately 110 thousandths of an inch higher than the originals, and that solved some of the feeding problems that original ones had. They tended to push rounds into the feed ramp. Well, with this new design of slightly taller magazine, the rounds get pushed straight into the chamber instead of having to hit the feed ramp and then slide up into the chamber. So that's a good example of the sort of improvement that they've made to these new AutoMags. It's also worth pointing out that the old ones just don't look nearly as good. The weld seam is way more visible, not as clean. You can see here they've actually cut a dimple as a stress relief so that you won't get a crack propagating from the top of that weld, and the material just looks a lot nicer on the new guns. While we're here, let's take a quick look at the markings. This is going to be a little tricky because this is such a shiny gun, but they have their own new AutoMag logo. It's very reflective there. It's already starting to get smudged from me handling it, but AutoMag, this is the classic edition in 44 AMP. And then on the other side, again, hard to read there with the reflections, we have AutoMag model 180D, made in Loris, South Carolina. All right, at this point, we can continue with disassembly by simply pulling down this lug. Note that I have taken the magazine out, but I leave the bolt locked open. And then when you pull this disassembly tab down, you can just take the barrel and barrel extension off of the gun. To continue with our disassembly, at this point, what we're going to do is drop the bolt forward. There are 2 recoil springs on the AutoMag, and they're located in these 2 channels. So there's a little hex screw there. This is actually not a separate screw. It is the recoil spring guide rod on each side. And so I can just unscrew each of these. It's going to pop just a tiny bit when it's completely unscrewed, but there we go, not very much. There's one, and there's the other. Now I can take the bolt out of the gun. So as I push the bolt back, it's going to rotate, which would be the unlocking cycle, and sort of pop open. And you'll notice at this point, the cocking piece on the back twists off to the side. It is under spring tension, and it's under spring tension, which what that normally is doing is trying at all times to rotate the bolt into battery so that it's locked. So when I pull the bolt all the way back, there we go, this comes off. There's that yellow is some grease in there, which I'm going to leave because that's helpful for proper operation. And you can see that there are two openings on what would normally be left and right that match these two lugs on the back of the bolt. So to assemble this, the cocking piece goes on the back, there we go, and rotates into position like that. I can then take out the firing pin right there. Now, in order to take the bolt out, there is a cross pin right here that I'm just going to push out with a plastic punch. There we go. That is essentially the cam pin. That's the equivalent of a cam pin in an AR because it runs in this track in the bolt. When the bolt is all the way forward, that cam pin hits this curve and the bolt is forced to rotate, which locks it in place. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and pull it out here. There is a little spring detent in the bottom of the frame that holds that in position. So you kind of have to wiggle this out because of that detent. Here is another one of the improvements made. The original AutoMag actually had a firing pin that was heavy enough that it could, in the right/wrong circumstances, fire out of battery. If you didn't have a magazine in, you put a cartridge straight into the chamber and dropped the slide without any resistance on it, there was a chance that the gun would detonate because the firing pin had enough inertia to slam forward with enough force to detonate a primer. Apparently, weight of the firing pin was increased during the original development process to fix some other problem, and they didn't realize that it had the secondary effect of causing the occasional out of battery. So what the new company did is they remanufactured the firing pin out of titanium so that they can keep essentially the same shape, the same geometry, but make it lighter. So this went down in weight by about 30%, and after their testing, they're content that the titanium firing pin does not cause out of batteries the way that the steel could. Now we can take a look at the bolts. This is our new bolt, this is our original bolt, and you can see a lot of subtle changes here. So for one thing, this relief cutout has been substantially changed in profile, and this is part of what was responsible for the unreliability of the original guns with a full magazine. The problem was, if you had 6 or 7 cartridges in the magazine, there was enough upward pressure on the magazine stack that it would actually interfere with proper operation of the bolt and cause malfunctions. And so by changing the relief cutout that's sitting over the magazine, they actually appear to have leveraged that force into actually assisting the bolt to rotate closed instead of preventing it from cycling, which is, that's a nice bit of engineering tweaking to the gun. They've made the whole locking system a bit stronger by making the locking lugs a bit longer front to back. So this is our new bolt, that's our old bolt. You can see that these are a little bit shorter than these. One more element of change here, the cocking pieces on the original AutoMags were cast parts, and so there were some tolerancing issues with them, and there were also some quality control issues. These could crack and break. On the new gun, the cocking piece, and a bunch of other parts. I believe the hammer is one of them, and some of the other small parts that used to be made as castings are on the new guns machined from stock. And so this is stronger, and frankly, it looks nicer. I don't like the sort of dull cast finish that the originals had. They've added some shine-reducing serrations on the back of the new ones, and just overall, the manufacturing quality has been substantially improved. There were issues with the original guns. They're like, hey, we're going to make a gun completely out of stainless steel. Have we ever made anything out of stainless steel, and do we really know what we're doing with that material? Well, not really, but we'll figure it out. So it's obvious how this can lead to some problems. One of the other details of operation of the AutoMag is the accelerator here. This is a lever where when the The barrel assembly is fully forward in battery. This accelerator lever is pushed back like this. As the barrel begins to move backward, this lug is eventually going to hit this front wall in the frame. That will happen at the point where the bolt has unlocked. And again, that's because this cam piece is locked right here, and as the bolt moves back within it, it's forced to rotate to lock and unlock. Anyway, when the accelerator hits that wall, it gets pushed up like this, and then the top end of the lever right up there kicks back. That is going to hit the bolt and give it a little bit of extra, well, acceleration to open it to properly extract the empty cartridge and send the bolt backwards to fully cycle. Inside the back of the bolt, there is a wire spring with a little tab coming down from the top. That is a torsional spring. That tab on the top locks into or sits in that little notch there. And so when the bolt is assembled into the gun, it sits in this configuration where that spring has been wound up 90 degrees. And what that means is that at all times, the bolt is attempting to rotate clockwise, which is rotating into battery. So as soon as it goes all the way forward, that spring pushes it into battery like so. And when the gun cycles open, it has to overcome that force, that spring pressure, to unlock going counterclockwise. And there you go. There's one of the new AutoMag 180D pistols, fully field stripped. Now, only time will tell if the standard production version of the newest AutoMag here lives up to the standard of this sample gun that I have and the few others that have gotten out there. They've shipped a handful of them, not a ton yet. They're still in production and building guns. But this one, at least, has really set a bar pretty high. I went into this filming not particularly without any particularly high expectations for the gun. Frankly, AutoMag Ltd had been talking to me for close to 4 or 5 years about wanting me to do some video on this gun, and I told them I will be happy to do video once you have a gun that you're actually shipping. And frankly, I didn't expect we would ever get to that point, but we have. They are shipping these, albeit slowly still, and taking this one out to shoot, it was way beyond any of my expectations. It is very accurate in my experience. It has been completely reliable. I've not had a single malfunction with it, which really shocked me. It's actually a really pretty pleasant gun to shoot, perhaps magnitude of the recoil aside. If you don't mind heavy kicking guns, you'll love this thing. If this is what you're looking for, I think it's really well done. The engineering seems to really be on point with this gun now. Of course, this is a sample sent by the company. It's not mine to keep. I didn't buy it myself. I didn't get anything in exchange for this review, aside from the ammunition that I used up in the filming of this review. And there have been times when the sample guns that come out from a production run are much better than the standard production ones. But honestly, I don't think that's going to be the case here, because I think the reason that this is better is the cumulative effect of 7 years of engineering, tweaking, and R&D to actually refine the design to the point where it should have been when the gun was first released. So I guess the short version of this is, if you think the AutoMag is pretty cool, you may now have the opportunity to get one that actually works as well as it should. I am taking this one to a backup gun match because, of course, I'd take an 8-inch 44 AMP to a backup gun match. We'll have that video tomorrow, so stick around to check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. I certainly enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.